All right, we've talked about this a couple of times over the last few weeks, and we even brought it up again the other day. So I wanted to take a look today because there was a really clean view on the 1 hour when you compare the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. And if you ever use Bitcoin and the Nasdaq to kind of pace what's going on with Bitcoin, then you've probably found that there's typically a real close correlation. And then obviously, if you're new to this, then what you find is that you've got Ethereum, chase Bitcoin, and your smaller coins chase Ethereum. So if that's not something you're aware of, then we'll just go ahead and repeat myself and toss that out there. But for everyone else who's kind of on point with this, let's go over what happened at the close today. I mean, if you look back in, for the rest of the day, you get the dips in the same places, you get the pops in the same places, you get most of the candle wicks in the same places. But what I really wanted to focus on was the last few candles of the day. And I wanted to show, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that. All right, so let's just mainly focus on, say, the last five candles. I think that'll make it simple. Let's do something like that. Really kind of proves, gets the point in that I'm looking at. All right, so, and then we'll look at it on a lower time frame. I'll show you guys it even stands out a bit more. So as we went into the close today, after the S&P made new lows, which made a lot of the stocks in the stock market make new lows today. If you're trading any of these, I'm sure you've seen this. And then, Bitcoin came down with it. And then a lot of your smaller altcoins made new lows or went back to like right in the range of the June lows that they had last touched on. Some of them that had touched lower in May went back to their May low kind of range. Then once the S&P got back up above its trend line that it kind of I can't talk, kind of have come in the day with, and it dropped below, this, and then it got back above it, and this down here is the new low that it made. What happened is right into the last candles as it came up above and it started trying to find stability right above the like 3588, trying to get basically back to 3600, which for Bitcoin would have been, it trying to get back to like 19.1. I mean, if you kind of look at the graphs and the way we've been comparing the levels and how they move together, that's kind of what I was looking at is if this could, secure 3600, then Bitcoin could, go back up and maybe roll into 19.1, something kind of like that. So as the last few candles came into the day, all of a sudden you had right here where, I mean, I'm not going to call it a decoupling. It's just you start to see strange movements where they're not doing the same thing lately that start to pop up. And I don't know, maybe people are just getting used to at this point that the sell side pressure from the S&P and the Nasdaq and the broader markets, especially in the US, are what's really controlling Bitcoin because in other hours, other markets are open. I mean, sometimes when it's midnight here, it's 12 o'clock somewhere else, and Bitcoin's not crashing based on other markets most of the time. It's crashing based on the US market. So if you follow these things, then what you can start to see here is when you started to come back up in the NASDAQ and try to see if you could secure this 3,600 and you get rejected, then you started, trending down basically and went back below the trend line. And that's where you finished the day. And then in the after hours, it continued to actually start to sell off even more. And, that's kind of what happened into the closing as it went into the closing. So moving forward from there, it's like Bitcoin kind of is getting the feeling, or the people that are trading this, that as the market closes and this is going to stop controlling things over here, that they're already prepped to run because the sell side pressure and what's dragging Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets down is the American stock markets and our high inflation and everything else that's going on here. So when you look and you see that you're continuing to come down into the close on the S&P, but for the last three candles, Bitcoin continued to trend higher. We're not trending higher over here, but we're trending higher here. Now, I might need to go look up, and maybe I'll post a separate video on that. Maybe we could take a look and see what the specific tech ETF. Maybe it was at that moment more coincided with just the tech ETF. I might take a look at that later and maybe post a video if it seems worth it. But for the most part, typically you're watching the S&P, and you can even watch it on a 1 minute or a 3 minute candle if you've got access to that, if you have an account that'll do that. And a lot of times what I'll see is that the S&P is leading Bitcoin. So I can start to see green candles on the S&P while Bitcoin's still being pushed down by the bears, and then all of a sudden I'll start buying because I'm seeing consistency here pushing up, and then Bitcoin will start to go up with it. So right here, I'm watching it push down. I'm waiting to maybe see if it's going to come down below. And I myself kind of thought, well, you get that after hours reduction in sell pressure, and you usually get a good pop. And then if you're willing to trade into the later parts of the evening, and you're on the same time frames I am, I'm on the west coast of California, then what you end up with is you buy these parts right here into the close, and you kind of know you'll at least get a little bit of a run up. You can still expect rejection at your major resistance lines, but you reduce some of that sell side pressure of being controlled by the American stock market, basically. Well, I it's crazy. I was posting this the other day, and I was seeing more of a direct correlation, and I was talking about that being a good setup. Now all of a sudden today, it's like more people were prepped for that. And as this started coming down, and you got to the say the number 4 candle, well, right here, when it just pushed down a little bit and you got this push down, people started buying. And when you got a little bit more, they continued buying. And if you look at this wick, that means that when it pushed to here, that considering the body of the candles up here, that's a lot of buying pressure that came in. The bulls really stepped in with force and aggressively bought that up. Whereas over here on the S&P, you got the opposite effect. The bears stepped in, and they just continued pummeling down and taking control and really making their presence known into the closing, and made a statement with it. And maybe some of that has to do with institutions selling off, and they got that little bit of a pump. Maybe some people start to buy thinking that we hit a double bottom this morning, or I mean, if you go back and look, we actually had just made a new low and come off of what people thought was a double bottom new low already. So I mean, I don't know, it was kind of a risky play. But what you have here is Bitcoin starting to go an opposite way of the S&P at an earlier stage. And if you go in and you look at it on a lower time frame, and we jump in and look at it on like a 15-minute chart, so you look at some more candles, bring these into play, you can just kind of see it even more. You see that it was even more candles back that Bitcoin came up and stayed above here, whereas the S&P tried and then continued trending down, went underneath, and then continued to push underneath. So I don't know, I mean, it's not a huge deviation, but I think it's worth noting, especially if you're somebody who was using those cues to trade, because in this exact moment, if you were basing an idea on the S&P leading, and you're like, oh, well, this is going down way earlier, this is getting ready, the top, and then you're like, oh, it wicks up into these wicks, and you're like, oh, okay, well, then let's, start shorting right there. It's going to be an awesome short. Well, as the market closes, Bitcoin's just going up. So, now you're getting wrecked in your short based off of playing it off of the S&P, which I myself have posted was typically a better move even on the higher time frames. I mean, even on the lower time frames. So, it's really starting to get to where it's still controlling your major moves, but in the grand scheme of things, as far as watching the low time frames and using it to scalp, it's becoming less and less accurate. And I don't know. I just think that's worth noting. I mean, we're all looking for trends in this bear market. We're all looking for whatever advantages we can get to, try to not get chopped up in this chop if you're someone who's trying to trade it. For most people, you're best off sitting on the sidelines, waiting for the major moves, just buying the major dips, just dollar cost averaging, waiting for the higher moves to, take your percentages out, pull your profits aggressively, reset, and try to do it all over again. Even if you're someone that thinks you trade decently and you've been doing a little shorting and some longs, I would really caution getting too aggressive with shorting at these levels, because it's becoming to a point that there's so much more upside risk versus downside risk, in my opinion, at least personally, that if you're someone who, likes to have a lot of conviction in your shorts and your longs, it's kind of, getting questionable to short at these levels. However, if you're really good with stop losses, you're really good at quick scalps, then I mean, just keep chopping this thing up. I mean, work your way through the chop and, cut your highs and lows, and you know what you're doing. There's nothing for me to really tell you. If you're someone who's a little bit more of a rookie and any of this is confusing to you, or you have any specific questions, or you'd like to see something in more detail, or maybe a couple of other references, you want to see, the Bitcoin with the Nasdaq, or you want to see the S&P with the Nasdaq, or Ethereum, or whatever it is, just let me know in the comments, and I'll try to do my best to individually answer questions, as well as individually take requests for charting and stuff like that. So I just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention, and notice it when I seen it, and just try to use it to the best of your advantage. Knowledge is power out there.